was that Paul's love for his brothers and sisters and his love for the lost. And so we're going to see the illustration of this in the beginning of Romans 9. And there's a part in 1 Corinthians 8, verse 1. Can I have somebody find 1 Corinthians 8, verse 1 for me, please? And read that. And it starts with but. B-U-T. All right.
Verse 1. Now about food sacrificed to idols. We know that we are all possess knowledge, but knowledge puffs up, while love builds up.
Okay. Now, we know that Paul was a very intelligent guy. And a lot of us in the room are very intelligent too, and we're very knowledgeable. But one of the things that he emphasizes throughout his ministry, throughout his preaching, was love. And he kept on emphasizing it, and he demonstrated it in different ways. And he wanted to demonstrate it the same way Jesus demonstrated it. So let's go ahead and turn to chapter 9 in Romans. We're going to start there. And if I can have somebody read verses 1 through 3, please. Go ahead, Joe.
Romans chapter 9, verse 1 through 3.
Yes.
I speak the truth in Christ. I am not lying. My conscience confirms it through the Holy Spirit. I have great sorrow and unceasing anguish in my heart. For I could wish that I myself were cursed and cut off from Christ for the sake of my people, those of my own race.
Okay. Now, just take those words, and the question I have this morning, has anybody ever shared the same experience that Paul's experienced in this scripture? Where you love someone so much, and you just want them to know God, and you were willing to do anything to pour your life into that person, and do whatever it took. Has anybody ever had that experience? I just kind of want to open that up for dialogue. Anyone? Brian?
Well, I think of, sharing or the message with your family, in general, and whether it's received or not received. I can, in answer to your question, that's what I think of.
Okay. Anyone else? Now, I want to point out 2 words here that he says, and he describes this. He talks about, I have great sorrow and unceasing anguish in my heart. Who is he talking to? Who is he saying this about? Gerald?
Well, he loves the Jewish race, his people, and it's breaking his heart that they're not accepting Christ the way he would want them to. So that's what's causing him anguish.
And what is he willing to do for them?
To give up his salvation in order that they may be saved according to the scripture.
Can you imagine anybody, are you willing to do something like that? Have you ever thought about that? Would we be ever willing to give up our own salvation for somebody that we love? Now, I know it's early in the morning and we've come for a Bible study, but the question is, and this specifically, when I started reading this, it gave me goosebumps. At first it gave me goosebumps, and at first I was like, I didn't get it. I really had kept on going over and saying, I'm missing something. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, love. How much do I love my brothers and sisters, and how much am I willing to do whatever it takes so they can have a relationship with God? Even my brothers and sisters. How much do I love the lost enough that I'm willing to do whatever it takes? And I started thinking about all the people in my life. And like all the people around me, the people that I'm just meeting for the first time. But have you ever had that experience where somebody poured into you the way Paul's pouring into the people that he's sharing with here? Have you ever had that experience, somebody pouring into you? Jose?
I remember in college, I was reached out in college, and I had this girl in my speech class. She would speak about God all the time, and I thought either she's crazy or she's for real. But she kept reaching out to me, and I kept saying no every time. But she kept, throughout the semester, inviting me to any event at church. And she finally said, how about if we study the Bible here in school? And she actually studied the Bible with me the first time. Then the second time, she brought the brothers, so I was surprised. But, you know, just the willingness for her to go that extra mile.
We wonder what her prayers were like. You know, Junior?
You know, I think of the brother and sister that share their faith with me and Anna, my wife. I mean, they poured their lives into us, their relationship with God. I mean, they opened their homes, they taught us what it was to be a disciple, to love people, to want to go out and serve God. And it really helped us to be where we're at now, 20-something years later. And it's given us the opportunity to go and do the same for others when we get to study the Bible with them. You know, we want them to make it. We want them to have that relationship with God. So we're willing to do whatever it takes, whether it's being up late at night or on the phone or whatever it is to help them get to understand the love of God as well.
I think as being a new disciple, it meant so much to have people in their busy times reach out to me. Just send me a quick message. And I'm like, how do they have time for me? That made me keep going. And that shows carrying that emotion.
Amen. Awesome. I just want to share a brief story that I experienced when I was a kid. I just became a disciple. You know, I was zealous. I was a kid. I was excited. And I was with the teens, and we were playing basketball. And at the end, you know, at that time, we were sharing with everybody good news, you know, and inviting people to church. And I remember we got finished up, and a couple of my friends were about to leave. And as they were leaving, got on a brand new motorcycle they had. And so I was like, where are you guys going? You know, they're heading out. I said, hey, you guys need to come to church. We started having this dialogue. And then I said, well, we really don't want to go to church. Not right now. It's not the right time. I said, well, when would it be the right time? And I said, well, what if you don't make it to heaven? And literally, like not even 15 minutes later, an older guy pulled out of his driveway and their motorcycle hit the car and they died before impact. And that was the last image I saw. You know, like just my friends, they're gone. I say, how could this be? You know, and you live with that. That, wow, was that me, God? How could you do this? Now, Paul's talking to his own people. And he's like, I'm willing to do whatever. And so, at this point, he's emotional. He's pleading for them to understand. Because what he's been preaching before was something completely foreign to what the Jews are accustomed to hearing. And we're going to find out here shortly. But the thing is, it's like, wow, you know, I love people. You know, at the time when I was young, I was like, I want to share with everybody. I want them to know about God. But it's like, okay, even now, if we look at our lives now, and we say, wow, you know, are we the same way when we first heard the message of God? Or when we first became disciples? Do we have the same love and zeal that Paul's sharing here throughout his ministry, you know, for other people? It's tough. When you read that, I'm like, man, I'm just going to do a Bible study on Sunday morning. And then I start, you know, peeling the onion. I'm like, whoa. Then I start down reading. I just started bawling. It's like, man. So now, but he goes a little bit further, and he shares his concerns, you know, for his brothers and sisters, and he wants them to hear this message. But if somebody could read for me in verse 4 through 6, please. Verse 4 through 5.
The people of Israel, theirs is the adoption as sons. Theirs the divine glory, the covenant, the receiving of the law, the temple worship, and the promises. Theirs are the patriarchs, and from them is traced the human ancestry of Christ, who is God over all, forever praised. Amen.
Okay. Now, what can we see about the Jews and their perspective at this time, and based on these verses here? How do they see themselves as?
They're God's chosen people.
God's chosen people. What are some of the perks and the benefits that they have being God's chosen people, based on the scriptures here? some of the promises that were mentioned. Jose?
They were adopted as sons.
Any more? There were some other ones.
I think about they were given the covenants of God, they were given God's word, his promises. So all these that were, this is what God had given them directly, and, but yet they were still adopted, but yeah, so they were blessed.
So they had all these perks. They had all these things about being the adopted sons and the heirs. This is who they were, and this is how they identified themselves with. But yet, they rejected the Messiah. Wow. And these are the same people Paul's trying to reach out to as well. And let's go ahead and read further in verses 6 through 13. Can I have someone read 6 through 13, please? Go ahead, Frank.
It says, "It is not as though God's word had failed, for not all who are descended from Israel are Israel, nor because they are his descendants are they all Abraham's children. On the contrary, it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. In other words, it is not the natural children who are God's children, but it is the children of the promise who are regarded as Abraham's offspring. For this was how the promise was stated. At the appointed time I will return, and Sarah will have a son." Keep reading.
Yes, please. Verse through 13.
"Not only that, but Rebekah's children had one and the same father, our father Isaac. Yet before the twins were born, or had done anything good or bad, in order that God's purpose in election might stand, not by works, but by him who calls, she was told, the older will serve the younger. Just as it is written, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated."
Yeah. See, here, Paul's expressing one of the biggest issues for the Jews at the time. He was addressing whether or not the word of God failed them, the law, And the question is, did God's promise to the Jews fail, or has it broken the covenant? Anyone? See, what he's saying is Paul's teaching concerned the Jews of the day because they based their election, or that the fact that they were chosen in relation with God, on two things: their race or their nationality, and they based it on obedience of the law. And so what we know is that when Paul was preaching salvation to like all of them, and he was going out through Corinth and he's preaching about this, basically they were hearing one thing: he is minimalizing their nationality. That was a big deal to be a Jew, right? Because they were the chosen ones. And then he also was the fact that the law, he was saying, well, we obey the law and we're Jewish, so we're good with God. And we're the only ones. We're the select few. But Paul was preaching something, he's saying Jesus died for all. So now we have to remember who Paul was. Paul was a Jew. He was them. And he's preaching this different message. But one of the things, I go back to the first verse in 1 through 3, it's like, wow, is he preaching like that they're not part of this? The Jews who are rejecting the Messiah? Is he out there saying that, what? Oh, you guys got it all wrong. I got it right. I know more than you. I got a relationship with God, not you. Was that his heart? Okay.
I think that, I read this and I think just like when Jesus spoke, that probably what Paul was saying was a tough nut to swallow for the Jews. Because it says, I lost my spot here. It's, in other words, it's not the natural children who are God's children. I think a lot of the Jews believe, well, you know what, I'm a son of Abraham, and therefore I'm good to go. And a lot of the Gospels, this is what Jesus was preaching, day in and day out. And that's why the Jews had such a hard time with it. And I think, well, why did this make it into the Bible again, or why did Paul seem to
talk about this so much, and I think about, well, maybe this is what we need to hear. We need to think about, am I really a disciple, or am I still living my life that I'm different? And I think that is challenging, and I know that for Paul it was challenging too. Because he's emphasizing, this is a big deal. It's such a big deal that I would give up my salvation to help you understand that.
Amen. Absolutely. Frank?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I don't see that he's like, from the standpoint of view that I'm right, you're wrong, but he's like, you know, he's got anguish, you know, he's like, you just missed this, you know, Jesus, this is what you missed. And I think of, you know, like, you know, me as a disciple, if someone tells me something, you know, like this, or they're, you know, they challenge me or something that I missed, you know, that's what I'm saying here, he's doing it of a heart of, you know, concern, he hurt, you know, this was the promise, this was it, you missed it, you know, so I see that concern, that really deep heart for his people.
Okay.
I think this was a personal thing for him as well, because if you go back and you recall the history of who he was before, he studied with Gamaliel, who was the preeminent teacher of that day. And so he was intimately acquainted with all of the people who were the ones that decided, you know, the Sanhedrin. He probably knew all of them personally on a first-name basis. So for him, he's looking at these men going, how can you be so dull? I wish that I could just slap you in the face and tell you that you're stupid. And I would give myself up because you ought to already know. But you don't. You missed it. You don't understand. And it kills me that you don't.
Okay. Junior?
I think it seems like he sees some of the Jews that have a sense of entitlement. I'm Jewish, I'm entitled to it. Instead, he's like, you know, where's the heart? You know, Jesus died for us. Do you see the compassion? Do you see the love? Do you see, you know, what it really means, what God did for you? And someone may be like, well, I'm a Jew, I'm good. You know, I get all these promises. It's a done deal for you.
Yeah, and a lot of things that I hear, there was definitely a depth of concern. He was like, and he knew them, and he wanted to address this with urgency of how important it was, you know, and the fact that what Ken was saying is very right. Just because we do things like read our Bible and pray and do the things or do the church thing, that does not mean anything if we don't understand sacrifice and salvation. Al?
I was just thinking, in addition to what you just said, and Ken, I was just read a little bit of an article, but just talking about how even how we can get it's really the self-righteousness, like we have the right doctrine, making Jesus Lord, baptism, this is what you need to do, and some other people don't have some of those things, so we can get at the self-righteousness about ourselves, like we have it all together, when it's still ultimately it's God's mercy who saves us, that no matter how right we might be in our doctrine, we can't miss out on the heart of the message of Jesus. And same thing for the Jews, you know, we're God's chosen people, we have this right, and they got that self-righteousness from that, but you know, how we can learn that from today is like, okay, we might have this right, but it's totally because of God's mercy that we even have what we have.
To me, it's kind of scary because the Jewish people believed at the time that what they believed was true. And what's being preached is that just because you believe it, it's not true. And what's scary about that is that just because we believe something don't necessarily make it true.
Right.
So, you know, we have to, you know, always be leery of that as well.
Yeah. You know, and we're going to be wrapping up here, but the one thing I want us to see that we could take the view of an academic review, review of Romans 9, or even Romans. And as I was doing myself, I was trying to read it, and understand it, and I just had to keep going back to Paul's heart and the heart of the matter. You know, we have to personalize this in a lot of ways. Because don't we have family members in our own family that could be on their deathbed and you're wondering, do they know God? I want them to know God. It's an emotional call. Paul's making an emotional plea for the people that he loves. You know, and I think sometimes, and I have to keep going back, if anything that we get out of today, my hope is that we connect emotionally with the people that are in our lives, you know, and apply Paul's heart here. Just, he's imitating Christ. Christ was willing to die for all of us, and he's saying, I wish I could do the same. You know, we all have, I look at my 13-year-old daughter, 14, actually, look very good. And, but I did it again. But I want her to know God. I want her to personally have a relationship with God. I pray for her. I cry for her. You know, and I'm not saying that we're not doing that. Please don't take it that way. What I'm saying is, you know, when we see this, let's not just look at it as a Bible study, but let's see, man, do I ask myself that question? What am I willing to do for the person that I love? What am I willing to give up? You know, and sometimes you have to make sacrifices with work and scheduling and time. It costs. You know, if I don't go to work, because something's going on with my daughters right now. I have to be there for her, but I can't miss work. That's tough. You know, I mean, these are just little things, but what are we willing to do for the people that we love? You know, so that way they know God. That way they can have a chance to get to heaven. Amen? So I just want to close with that. I mean, Romans 9, there's a lot more to it, and I wish I could do you more justice on it, but I just wanted to really focus on the fact that, you know, God desires a relationship with us, and he's shown an immense mercy on us. You know, but he's just doing all he can. So why don't we pay it for and do everything we can for somebody else to have that same relationship with other people, amen? So, Joe, can you close out?
Good morning, Heavenly Father. Thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for this time that you blessed us to come together to have our Bible class. Thank you for the excellent lesson that Miguel shared with us through your Holy Spirit. Help us remember, Father, that it's by the grace, by your grace and the sacrifice of Jesus Christ that we have forgiveness of sins, and that we can never think of ourselves as special. It's just that you've had mercy on us, and help us have that love for others, Father, who don't know you. Please bless the rest of the service. Please bless everyone who's on their way. Please meet the needs, Father, throughout the church. I pray, Father, that everything we do today brings you glory. We thank you for what we've learned. Help us put it into practice and love the lost and do the things that Jesus did. We love you, Father. We thank you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.